I told my parents I won't drive my brother to school unless he is more hygienic because his smell literally makes me sick. So my little brother Jake is 15 and I'm 17, and I've been driving him to school for the past 6 months since I got my license. At first, it was actually kind of cool having the extra time to hang out with him in the car. But then around 3 weeks ago, something changed. I don't know if it's because he started playing more video games late at night or what, but Jake just stopped caring about basic hygiene. Like completely stopped. I'm talking about not showering for days, wearing the same clothes over and over, and this musty smell that would just fill up my entire car the second he got in. The first time I really noticed it was on a Monday morning. I opened the passenger door for him, and this wave of stench just hit me like a brick wall. It was like a mix of old sweat, dirty laundry, and something else I couldn't even identify. I actually had to step back and take a breath of fresh air before getting in my own car. I tried to be subtle about it at first. I'd roll down all the windows even when it was freezing outside, and I started keeping those little air fresheners in my car, but it didn't help. The smell would just stick to the fabric seats and linger there for hours after I dropped him off. By the second week, I was starting to feel nauseous during our drives, like actually sick to my stomach. I'd have to breathe through my mouth the entire time, and even then, I could still taste this gross smell in the air. My friends started commenting on how my car smelled weird, which was embarrassing. I finally decided to talk to Jake about it directly. I waited until we were almost at school one morning and said something like, "Hey, you might want to shower more often?" Dude. But he just shrugged and said he had showered recently, which was obviously a lie because his hair was so greasy it looked wet. Things got worse when my girlfriend Emma asked if she could get a ride to school with us one day. I couldn't say no without explaining why, so I just hoped Jake would have cleaned himself up. But nope. Emma got in the back seat, and within like 30 seconds, she was trying not to gag. She kept shooting me these looks like, "What is that smell?" And I was so mortified. After that, Emma started making excuses not to ride with us, and I knew she was telling her friends about it because they'd give me weird looks when I walked by. It was humiliating. The breaking point came last Thursday. I picked Jake up, and the smell was so bad that I actually had to pull over after like 2 blocks because I thought I was going to throw up. I'm not exaggerating. I literally had my head out the window dry, heaving on the side of the road. Some lady jogging by asked if I was okay. That afternoon, I went straight to my parents. I found them in the kitchen and just laid it all out. I told them I wasn't driving Jake to school anymore unless he started showering regularly and washing his clothes. My mom immediately got defensive and said I was being dramatic. But my dad asked what exactly was going on. I explained everything. How the smell was making me physically sick, how it was affecting my friendships, how embarrassing it was. My mom kept insisting that Jake was just going through a phase, and that teenage boys smell sometimes, but I told her this wasn't normal teenage boy smell. This was like he hadn't washed himself in weeks. Jake was upstairs playing games with his headset on, so he had no idea we were even talking about him. My dad went up to his room and came back down 5 minutes later with this look on his face like he'd seen something horrible. He just nodded at me and said, "Okay, I get it now." Turns out Jake's room smelled even worse than he did. My dad said there were dirty clothes everywhere, moldy food plates under his bed, and his sheets looked like they hadn't been changed in months. It was gross. My parents ended up having this huge intervention with Jake that night. They set up a shower schedule, made him do his own laundry twice a week, and said if he didn't follow it, he'd lose his gaming privileges. Jake threw a massive fit and said I was ruining his life. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. The next morning was the first time in weeks that I could actually breathe normally in my car during our drive to school. Jake was still mad at me and wouldn't talk, but at least he smelled like soap instead of a garbage dump. My mom later admitted that she hadn't realized how bad it had gotten because she was so used to it gradually getting worse. She thanked me for bringing it up, even though it was uncomfortable. Apparently, Jake had been skipping showers after soccer practice too, which explained a lot. Story 2. At Easter dinner, my brother mocked me in front of the whole family. Not everyone's cut out for a real career in tech. Everyone laughed except Grandma. She turned to me and asked calmly, "Is that why your company just bought out his and laid him off?" The table went silent. My brother's fork froze midair. His wife whispered, "You didn't tell me he was your new boss." Chapter 1. The Golden Child and the Ghost. Easter had always been a performance. Not a holiday, not a family gathering, just a stage. And my brother Ethan, he was always the star. He'd strut in with his Rolex catching the light just right. His wife's Chanel heels clacking behind him. Their toddler dressed like an Instagram post. And the whole room would erupt in admiration like he'd walked in with a Nobel Prize instead of delailed eggs. Tech genius. Startup king. Self-made. Meanwhile, I, the other son, would slide in quietly, carrying whatever dish mom guilt tripped me into bringing. No one ever asked what I was working on. No one cared. If I tried to mention my work, the subject shifted back to Ethan's newest acquisition, Tesla or bonus. To them, I wasn't just in Ethan's shadow. I was the shadow. Family favoritism carved in stone. Our parents had always made it clear Ethan was destined. Early honors classes, summer tech camps, gifted programs. I was sweet but simple. The quiet one, the polite one, the one who didn't make waves. When I dropped out of college to build my own software firm, they called it a cute little side hustle. Ethan raised $2 million in venture capital funding for his B2B SaaS platform, Champagne. I landed our first government contract with scalable AI surveillance tech, Crickets. He was a Silicon Valley story. I was just the guy tinkering with code in a hoodie. But I didn't care. Not at first. I was building something quietly in the dark. Alone, yes, but focused. My team was small, loyal, and laser sharp. We didn't flash, we executed. Ethan played chess in the spotlight. I built the board behind the curtain. The setup for humiliation. That Easter, something felt off. The energy buzzed louder than usual. My mother was all nerves and pearls, and Dad kept polishing the wine glasses like someone important was coming. They seated Ethan at the head of the table. Me far end next to the coat rack. I bit my tongue. Dinner began with polite toasts. Then it happened. Ethan clinked his glass. "I just want to say not everyone's cut out for a real career in tech," he said, smiling directly at me. "Some of us build companies. Others build, what is it you do again, bro? WordPress plugins." The table exploded in laughter. Even Dad snorted into his napkin. I didn't say a word, but someone else did. Grandma. She slowly dabbed her lips with her napkin, turned her head toward me, and asked, voice calm, steady, but lethal. "Is that why your company just bought out his and laid him off last Friday?" The table froze. Ethan's fork paused midair. His wife's head snapped toward him. "Wait, you didn't tell me he was your new boss?" The laughter died instantly. Silence, heavy, choking, real. I just looked down, cut into my ham, and smiled. Chapter 2. How to Fire a Brother Without Saying a Word. Let me take you back 6 months before the Easter ambush, before Grandma's cold reveal, before the smirk that turned a dinner table into a war zone. Because long before the humiliation, there was strategy. The beginning of the end. It started with a press release. A mid-sized software company, Synchron, known for its flashy UX dashboards but stale back-end, had announced a new partnership with an enterprise data firm. Nothing extraordinary except one thing. I recognized the codebase. It was mine. Or rather, the core AI module they were licensing had my team's signature written all over it. Not literally, of course, but when you build something from scratch, you recognize your fingerprints in the logic trees and modular layering. So I started digging. And that's when I saw the name I hadn't seen in years. Ethan Montgomery, CTO. My brother had landed at Synchron after his second startup fizzled out. A buddy from his Stanford days brought him in. Ethan, ever the charmer, convinced their board to pivot toward an AI-powered data clarity engine. Problem was he didn't build it. We did. Legally, they had licensed a slim API gateway we'd developed through a shell reseller. But they were now abusing it, plugging it into the backbone of their new product without a proper license. That was theft. But I didn't sue, not yet. I acquired the power of silent moves. See, my company, Mantiscore, didn't operate in the spotlight. We were surgical, quiet, boring if you asked TechCrunch. But we had cash and we had leverage. So I made a few calls, not to lawyers, to brokers. Within 4 weeks, Mantiscore acquired Synchron Tech's debt from 3 venture lenders. 2 of those notes were in default territory. Suddenly, Ethan's company owed me more than they could repay. Still, I said nothing. I let their burn rate balloon. I let them announce a new product demo using our AI. I waited until the night before their biggest investor pitch, then called their CEO, the quiet buyout. Here's the offer, I told him. You sell to Mantiscore quietly without public fuss, or I call the licensing board, the FTC, and your top 3 investors. You've got 24 hours. They folded in 7. Just like that, I owned Synchron Tech. Their entire suite was released except Ethan. I told HR to retain him for a transitional consultation period. No office, no emails, no desk, just one document to sign, his own release, the delivery of silence. I never told Ethan. He found out when his badge stopped working. When his Slack access vanished, when he checked his bank and saw his severance deposit from Mantiscore Holdings Incorporated. And still I never called. Not until Easter. Not until he mocked me again. Not until Grandma shattered the illusion in front of his wife, our family, and the ham centerpiece. Chapter 3. The Gift Basket and the Letter. Ethan didn't show up to work the Monday after Easter. Not that he had a desk anymore, but HR still marked it as a voluntary absence. He hadn't called, hadn't emailed, and as far as I knew, hadn't told a soul what had really happened. Not his wife, not our parents, not even his LinkedIn. Because how do you explain that your younger brother, the one you mocked your whole life, quietly acquired your company and removed you like a rogue line of code? You don't. You spiral. The gift that wasn't a gift. 2 days later, I had a package delivered to Ethan's house. Not by courier, by private delivery service. A white glove firm we used at Mantiscore for high-stakes corporate transitions. Not cheap, but precise. Immaculate timing, pressed suit drivers, and documentation delivery with signature required. Inside the hand-delivered gift box, a single bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon from his favorite vineyard, the one Dad used to take us to as kids. A box of hand-rolled cigars, again his brand, and beneath it all, a thick envelope sealed with wax, my letter, the letter. Ethan, you once told me I'd never be able to handle real tech, that I was too methodical, too quiet, too boring. And you were right. I am quiet, but you never asked what that silence was building. You didn't see the nights I spent rebuilding what your ego broke. You didn't notice the patents I filed, the algorithms I refined, or the companies I invested in while you hosted launch parties with no launches. You laughed at me. Now I own your exit package. This isn't revenge. This is balance. This is what happens when someone builds and someone steals. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just letting you know we're even. His wife's message. I wasn't expecting a response, but the next day I got one from his wife. An email simple, direct. I thought you were exaggerating, but now I see. I wish he'd told me the truth. Maybe then we could have planned for something better than lies. She attached a photo. It was the Easter dinner table. Everyone smiling except Ethan. And in the background, slightly out of focus, Grandma holding her wine glass, smirking toward the camera as if she'd known the storm before it landed. The fallout begins. By the end of the week, Ethan had deactivated all his social media. His former co-founder released a cryptic LinkedIn post. Check your back end. And your brother word spread in the VC world. Softly, not publicly, but enough that Ethan's next pitch died before the deck hit a table. I didn't sabotage him, I just watched. Chapter 4. The acquisition nobody saw coming. The deal closed on a quiet Tuesday morning, 3 days before Easter. There were no headlines, no press releases, just a flurry of NDAS, asset consolidation paperwork, and one final signature from the board of directors. We didn't need the whole company, just their proprietary API, 2 developers, and access to a niche enterprise client list. Everything else redundant, including upper management, including my brother. He didn't know it yet. Of course, that part was deliberate. I could have pulled him into the loop, given him a heads up, even offered him a position. But I remembered every time he'd mocked me, dismissed me, made snide comments at family gatherings about my little coding experiments and freelance dabbling. So, I said nothing. Instead, I let the machinery work. On Thursday, the internal email went out to his company's staff. We've been acquired. Transition meetings begin Monday. Some departments will be downsized as part of integration. His LinkedIn status changed from Director of Product to Open to Work before Sunday. But none of that had reached the family yet. They still thought he was the golden child, the one climbing ladders while I played around with startups. That Easter dinner would be their wake-up call. Chapter 5. The dinner that changed everything. Easter dinner at Grandma's house was a tradition. Spiral ham, too many casseroles, and a table full of subtle family competition disguised as conversation. My brother Eric arrived fashionably late. Of course, his wife on his arm, a bottle of overpriced wine in the other. He was all smiles, loud jokes, and thinly veiled digs. "Not everyone's cut out for a real career in tech," he said, waving his fork in my direction. "Some people build, others tinker. But hey, there's honor in trying." Laughter bubbled around the table. My mother chuckled awkwardly. My uncle smirked. Even my dad gave a tight smile. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak, but Grandma did. She set down her teacup with a deliberate clink, folded her hands in her lap, and turned her calm eyes toward me. "Is that why your company just bought out his and laid him off?" she asked, sweet as sugar. The table went silent. My brother's fork froze midair. His wife's smile evaporated. "You didn't tell me he was your new boss," she whispered, barely audible. Eric's mouth opened, then closed. Color drained from his face. I could have twisted the knife, told them all how his severance package didn't even cover his leased Tesla, or how I was the one who made the final call not to retain his role. But I didn't. Instead, I simply said, "Some people build, others mock the builders." Then I turned back to my plate and continued eating. No one spoke for the rest of dinner, not even Eric. Epilogue. The quiet echo of vindication. Weeks passed after Easter dinner, but the silence between my brother and me lingered like a bruise beneath a shirt, hidden but tender. Eric never reached out. Neither did his wife. Word spread through the family, though, about the merger, about the layoffs, and about how I was the one pulling the strings behind the scenes all along. But I didn't gloat. I didn't rub salt into the wound. That wasn't the point. I'd spent years being mocked by the golden child, written off as the quiet coder who didn't have what it took to make it big. I'd watched him breeze through promotions and applause while I worked in silence, building, failing, building again. And in the end, it wasn't spite that gave me power. It was patience. Now, I run the kind of company people once told me I wasn't cut out for. I mentor young engineers who remind me of who I was. I walk into meetings where CEOs nod before I even sit down. And on quiet days, I sip coffee from the office balcony and smile at how small the world once felt. The best revenge, it turns out, isn't humiliation. It's outgrowing the people who thought they'd always be taller. And when Grandma called a few days later, laughing gently as she said, "You didn't even have to raise your voice, did you?" I realized that some victories don't need applause. They just need time. Was this revenge perfectly justified, or should the storm have raged harder? Drop your verdict below. I read every single one. Hit like if you crave justice and share this story with someone who needs its fire. Subscribe to Revenge Exposed because here betrayals don't sleep. They hunt their owners. Every shadow hides a reckoning. Every mask breaks and every betrayal is answered. Stay sharp. Stay unbroken.